Hey there, and thanks for joining me again today for another quick little review. Today I have got the Gretsch Electromatic Jet Club. And this is a really cool little cheap guitar that does a lot of things very well. And I'm going to do a real quick rundown of what's going on here. So basically we've got a basswood body with a laminated maple top, carved maple top, so it's not flat. It has got a little bit of an arch to it like a Les Paul would. You've got the Gretsch style humbuckers. These are not necessarily the TV Jones type pickups. They are humbuckers, but they are definitely different than what we would find in a Gibson style single cutaway guitar. You've got what I'm assuming is a maple neck. I really couldn't find any literature on it, but it has a 12-inch radius on it, which most of the time is really pretty good, close to what a Les Paul would have. On this one, I've had a few little issues with it. There's a couple of things that are not quite working the way that I think they should. But this is actually not my guitar. It's a loaner to me from a friend of mine, so I'm not going to change too much on it. But overall, you could pick this guitar up for about 300 bucks. I think it was $299 or $319 or something like that not too long ago. But now on Sweetwater, I just looked it up, it's $499. So it's a little bit more significant of an investment, but it's still coming in at a price point below your Epiphones, the higher end Epiphones, and certainly below, any guitars made in America or anywhere close to us. So this is a Chinese guitar, which, I wish everybody would stop making guitars in China, stop supporting China, period. I don't support that economy or their culture. I got nothing against the people, but, we can't support communism. But that to the side, you got one volume, one tone, three-way selector. So it's very similar to a normal Les Paul style guitar, single cut. It's pretty lightweight. It's definitely significantly lighter than your average Les Paul, be it a Epiphone or a real Gibson. And it's really playable, and it's got some really cool tones, which I will demonstrate here in just a minute. But besides that, it's pretty run-of-the-mill outside of the bolt-on neck. Now that's unusual for this style of guitar. I'm not super crazy about it. I would rather have a set neck, but obviously at the price point this was going for, that's probably a major budget concern, is being able to just bolt on any neck that they pull off the assembly line and make it work. Now that being said, the neck joint is actually pretty clean on this guitar. The fit and finish is pretty clean and pretty nice. The pickups fit in nicely. It's got the Electromatic and the stop bar tailpiece, which work well. The intonation was easy to get in spec. So those are all really good things. The tuners feel pretty high quality. I mean, they're obviously just cheap tuners, and they're not completely even, to be honest. They're not necessarily set in there perfectly, but they're close enough to get the job done. And the finish looks cool. It is polyurethane, but I like the color. I like the stain of the neck and the body. All of that is really cool. And the Gretsch style knobs, I think, are pretty neat as well. They're not push-on. They've got a little set screw in them. And I actually like that better than the push-on knobs that you would find on a Fender or a Gibson. Now this guitar, since it is a friend of mine's, I know it has had some serious pot issues. And we're not talking about the smoking kind. We're talking about the volume pot, the tone pot has been questionable, as has the three-way switch. Now, treating those with a little bit of electronical conductive spray makes a little bit of difference, but this three-way switch is still acting up a little bit, and the pots they feel fine, but they're not as nice as a CTS pot or something like that. And to be honest, this is run of the mill for anything budget these days. That's a big drawback. So anyway, some of the tones that you can get out of this are relatively close to vintage Les Paul, but they're not. They're different. And I was surprised by that, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to play this guitar and want to do a little review on it, is it's got some unique tones in here that you're not going to really find on anything that Epiphone or Gibson is offering, and it's certainly not a single coil tap tone that you would get from any kind of Fender. It's got something all to its own that is really pretty cool, and to me it's got a little bit of a chewy element, and I've mentioned this in a couple of my Les Paul reviews, that I'm really into that vintage chewy kind of spongy type of pickup sound that you get from a humbucker. And as usual, I've got this just run straight into SM57 straight into my interface, so there's no after effects coming in the box, but I do have my Fender Tree Verb on the effects loop of my Dr. Z amp. My Z Jetta is what I'm recording this through. But it's an attainable tone. I mean, the Z is pretty sweet, but it's not anything that, you know, crazy above and beyond what you might get out of a Blues Junior or something like that. Now I've got a few pedals I'm going to try this with, a few overdrive pedals. I've been messing around with it for a couple of days, and it responds pretty well to the Tube Screamer, which everybody's got a Tube Screamer, and it also is working pretty well with my Missing Link Audio Allman Brothers type pedal that I've got here, which is the Hotlanta pedal. I couldn't remember. It's working pretty good with those. It's not responding as well to the Plimsoll pedal as most of my other single cut guitars do. But anyway, let's play it a little bit here. Let's put it on the bridge pickup, and I'm having a little bit of an issue with the setup with this thing. It's got some really light strings on it, much lighter than what I prefer, and I'm having a problem touching the string to the pickup with my right hand. If this was my guitar, I'd set this up with some 12s, some D'Addario 12s and a little higher action, and I would actually lower both pickups a little bit because I think there's a more classic tone available in there, but it sounds pretty good the way that it is. Probably hear right there that it's putting out a tone that's humbucker, you know, oriented, but it's a little different. It's got something different going on there. Now, one thing I've been surprised about with the 12-inch radius is with this setup, and I think I could dial this out again if this was my own guitar and I was really spending a lot of time with it, but it's fretting out on a big bend. You can hear how the tone is dipping out because the string is touching too many frets. You lose some volume when you really bend the string heavily. I think that could be dialed out, but I can't be 100% sure about that because I haven't actually tried to do it. Neck pickup. Now that's a big difference to me. That may be a bigger difference than most single cut guitars between the tone you get on the bridge pickup and the neck pickup. I was surprised how different the tone was. Now, for any of you that know what I do, I always use these type of guitars in the center switch position where both pickups are running, and on all my Gibsons and my Epiphones, I'm able to blend those two pickups together. And that's a huge component of my sound and my tone. I really use that. That's the only way I actually play live. I very rarely will use one pickup or the other. I almost always use them both blended a little bit. Now, obviously, with this guitar, I cannot blend these pickups because I only have one volume, one tone. But luckily, Gretsch did something right, and the combination of these two pickups definitely is the best sound that I think this guitar has. And again, I apologize. I made about 25,000 mistakes right there, but I struggle with a smaller gauge string, and I have a more aggressive style than it allows me to manipulate them the way I want to. But you know, being a professional guitarist, I should be able to adapt to that, but I can't. Anyway, you hear how it's got a really good, nice balanced tone running both of those pickups together. Now, me personally, I have no reason to really back off the volume all that much, but I'm gonna cut this pedal off, give a clean tone, and it's got a good clean tone. It's got a sweet sound to it. And you can hear those little pops going on in there maybe. I don't know if you can or not, but that's my hand touching the pole pieces of the bridge pickup with the 6th string when I'm manipulating strings and muting the ones that I don't want to ring out. Which, if I think about it real hard, I can avoid that, but if it was mine, I would just have that set up a little bit different. But if you're in the market for an inexpensive single cut, dual humbucker type guitar, and you don't need the 2 volumes, 2 tones, and you don't care about the bowl-tone neck all that much, this is a cool guitar, man. It really is. Some of the big negatives I can say about it is the electronics are kind of garbage, the switch is not good, and the pots are not good. The neck is a little too thin this way, and for me, it's a little too thin overall. It feels a little bit like a 60s, a smaller 60s Les Paul neck is kind of what this neck reminds me of, and I really like a giant 50s style. The other negative I've found with this guitar is the nut needs some work. It's a plastic nut, you know, cheap guitar plastic nut. I think you could probably work it out in there with a little bit of sandpaper, maybe some files, and open up the back side of that, and it would be a little easier to get in tune and stay in tune. But right now, I had struggled a couple of times, especially with the 3rd string, trying to get that G tuned up, and I'm half a step down, so that F sharp tuned up, and it would pop into a much higher tuning than what I wanted. But these are things that are solvable with a little bit of money or a little bit of time and skill. Just depends on which one of those combinations you've got. But again, overall, I think this is a cool guitar. If you can get it for the old price, around $300, if you can pick one up used that's in nice shape, I think you would be remiss not to. Now, for $500, there's a lot of stuff out there in that price range, but I will say that this is a higher quality guitar than what I have experienced with a lot of the Squiers and a lot of the Les Pauls. My next review that I'll have coming up after this is on the 50s model Epiphone Les Paul Standard that is out right now. and I picked one up this year just because I was curious. I've got an older one. I've got a stack of Gibsons right here behind the camera that I can compare it to, which is kind of unfair, but it's a more expensive guitar than this, and in some ways I think it's better, and in some ways I think that this has got some advantages over it. So the Gretsch Electromatic Jet Club, if you can find one for a good price, I'd say in the $400 range, it's well worth it. $500 is another story, but check it out. If you're in a music store, you see one of these hanging on the wall, I think it looks really cool. I think it has a unique sound, and I think overall, with a little bit of a setup, the rat strings for you, and maybe a little bit of treatment to the electronics, cleaning them out, getting them lubed up, I think it's a giggable guitar, to be honest with you. So yeah, thanks for joining me today. Tune in for some of my upcoming reviews, and I will see you guys out in the real world.